Yes.
On behalf of the Dominican Studies Association, I want to welcome you to this panel on the social and cultural perspective of COVID-19. We have a lot to cover. I am excited to be here. I work as a member of the board of directors since 2018, and it's been a delightful experience as renowned novelist and poet Julia Alvarez said yesterday how she felt when she worked with her Dominican community, how she feels that she is back home, right? That she's making roots away from home. And this is the experience that working at the Dominican Studies Association has been for me. So I welcome you this morning. We have an exciting list of panelists. We have 5 originally listed in the program, but it seems that one panelist is having difficulty joining us, Lina Cordero. We're still hopeful that she might show up, but if not, we will go on and extend the floor for discussions. So we're going to start with the presentation by Maria Cristina Fumagalli, a professor of literature at the University of Essex, Colchester, England. I want to say very quickly just the introduction of each panelist so that we have more time for the presentations and discussions. Professor Fumagalli has among her latest publications one called When Dialogue is No Longer Possible, What Still Exists is the Mystery of Hope, Migration and Citizenship in the Dominican Republic in Film, Literature, and Performance. And this appeared in an edited volume titled Border Transgression and Reconfiguration of Caribbean Spaces, recently published in 2020. She also has a foreword to Freddy Prestol Castillo's El Masacre Se Pasa a Pie, or You Can Cross the Massacre on Foot, also published recently. With this, she will be presenting the 2 of them, Professor Fumagalli and Professor Bridget Wooding, who is the director of Caribbean Migrants Observatory, a think tank in the Dominican Republic in Santo Domingo. The both of them will present a video, and then they'll be open for discussions called Stranger Than Fiction Toward a New Haitian-Dominican Narrative under COVID-19. Professor Fumagalli will present the first part, and then Professor Wooding will present the second part, or will be available for discussion of the second video. I'm going to introduce the panelists as they go, and then I will introduce the second set of panelists when they're done. Yes, with that, I'll give the floor to the video by Professor Fumagalli. Whenever it is ready, it can begin.
Okay.
And I understand our IT group will play the video.
Should I play it? IT.
We have it too, right? We have it too, but we're waiting for.
Yeah, go ahead, Nelson. You can play it.
Okay, thank you. I'll do that.
Okay, Nelson. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I have it too. I have a copy that Professor Santana sent me early.
Give me just a few seconds. I'll be right.
Certainly.
The correct video. Okay, here we go. Un momentito.
Good day, everyone. I wanted to thank the organizer for allowing me to send this talk, pre-recorded talk from the UK, and to point out that the very fact that I am presenting with a pre-recorded talk is a stark reminder of the current pandemic. This collaborative paper aims at pointing towards new possibilities and new narratives in Dominican-Asian relations opened up precisely by the pandemic, by using a fictional test as springboard. I will start by mapping the territory with this test and will then pass on the baton to my colleague Bridget Wooding in Santo Domingo for more on-the-ground research. Before COVID-19, many writers have tried to grapple with causes.
We're having difficulty with the sound. Can anybody hear it?
Yes. Professor Santana, would you like me to try playing it from my end?
Tentacles.
Thank you.
When they
Oh,
reach
there it goes.
the Dominican Republic, Asians fleeing.
Should I hit it back a few seconds back? I apologize. Should I? Okay, I apologize for that.
Fictional and real locations. Among them, also Juno Diaz and Rita Indiana had imagined the island of Hispaniola in the grip of viral outbreaks, which had their epicenter in Haiti. In the post-apocalyptic future of Rita Indiana's La Mucama de Omikunle, or Tentacles, we are told that when they reach the Dominican Republic, Haitians fleeing the quarantine declared on the other side of the island are promptly recognized by security cameras, which proceed to release lethal gas, and activate automatic collectors who disintegrate their contaminated bodies. In Monstro, a science fictional short story which also depicts a post-apocalyptic scenario, Diaz informs us of how a mysterious viral outbreak unleashes a horde of Haitians who, infected by the virus and turned into murderers and cannibals, ominously move towards the border with the Dominican Republic. At that point, Dominican authorities close the border and instruct the army to meet the invaders with ultimate force. In our stranger than fiction world, it was the Haitian government which unilaterally closed the border of Hispaniola before the first case of COVID-19 was detected in Haiti. While the Dominican Republic is the country in the Caribbean which is most affected by COVID-19, both in terms of number of cases and deaths, Haiti has so far succeeded in maintaining a far lower rate of infection and mortality. Arguably, the striking perspective of 2020. Written before the current pandemic in the historiographical mode that counterintuitively characterizes science fictional and speculative texts, Diaz's and Rita Indiana's fictional account relate to us stories about the present of the time of writing, 2012 for Diaz, 2015, which is the dates of publications for Rita Indiana, but also about the past that led to that present. They talk to the present we are now inhabiting, aptly framing for us the stranger than fiction possibilities it can contain and which must urgently be seized. If anything, they can work as cautionary tales, which introduce us to the post-pandemic notion that a return to life as we know it or as we knew it, or to a kind of normality whereby Haitianism, denationalization, and deportations are a status quo, should be avoided. Arguably, Diaz and Rita Indiana were writing about the then all-too-present realities of the 2011 outbreak of cholera in Haiti, which killed thousands of Haitians, concomitant Dominican anti-Haitian discourses, which warned that the Dominican apocalypse was impending due to the imminence of a stampede of desperate Haitians crossing the border into the country, and the infamous 2013 ruling, or La Sentencia, which de facto denationalized over 133,000 Dominicans, mainly of Haitian descent, adopting legal means to dispose of them and their rights with the same unceremonious ruthlessness with which the lethal gas and automatic collectors deal with infected Haitians with Indiana's novel. Significantly, in a move that reveals how racism, colorism, and the pathologization of Haiti and Haitians go hand in hand with Dominican anti-Haitianism, the popular name of the epidemic, which in Diaz's short story begins to manifest itself by making Haitians blacker, is Negrura. Diaz explains that Haitian Dominicans and Haitians living in the Dominican Republic began to be deported over a freckle, a comment that criticizes the way in which, over many years, the Dominican government has resorted to arbitrations, often targeting dark-skinned individuals regardless of their legal status, as a means to control and regulate Haitian immigration. Deportations also followed the 2013 ruling obliquely referred to by Rita Indiana. A moratorium on deportation took place when the National Regularization Plan for Foreigners was operated until the middle of 2015, but they were promptly reinstated when the registration for the plan lapsed. Interrupting the suspension in place since the beginning of the pandemic, deportations have also started again on September the 21st, a back to normal move that has been strongly criticized by civil society. Rita Indiana does not elaborate on the nature of the virus, but in Monstro we are told that the first Haitians to be infected are the poorest of the poor. This foregrounds the pernicious correlation between health and wealth and indirectly denounces how political neglect increases the vulnerability of those who are not in a position to protect themselves. Sadly, apart from being the epicenter of the COVID-19 pandemic in the Caribbean, the Dominican Republic is also the single largest case of statelessness in Latin America and the Caribbean. Globally, the pandemic has aggravated pre-existing inequalities everywhere. In the Dominican Republic, along with other groups in vulnerable situations, it has predictably aggravated the plight of the denationalized and stateless who are ineligible for state aid and official social protection. There is also little incentive for hundreds of thousands of irregular migrants who, since 2014, have engaged with the regularization program, but still find themselves with a fragile or out-of-status legality to come forward and stake claim to humanitarian aid from the authorities because they fear deportation when the health crisis subsides. Despite all the challenges that it presents, however, the pandemic could provide opportunities to address the predicament of Haitian migrants and denationalized Dominicans of Haitian ancestry. And in the stranger than fictional scenario we currently inhabit, it is clear, in fact, that in order to be effective for everyone, the Dominican coronavirus response has to include those who have been routinely marginalized and neglected and who must have their rights to fully belong in Dominican society recognized. In what follows, Bridget Wooding will continue by elaborating with more detail on these dynamics based on current research on the ground. Thank you for your attention and have a good day.
Very well. Thank you very much. This is will bring, I'm sure, a lot of reaction. Very, very good point of departure, especially for this conference. Should we continue with the second presentation by Professor Wooding now, the second video, and then we'll open the floor for a few discussion quickly. And
yes, one moment. Should I play it on my end? Okay, I'll play it on my end.
we have the same title for the presentation, so she's just doing the second part.
Correct. Just let me know once I hit play.
Yes, please, you can start. Thank you.
Good morning. Maria Cristina Fumagalli has set our stranger than fiction scene admirably, and in what follows, I will report from the ground on the evolving situation as regards anti-Haitianism, statelessness, and deportations. Accordingly, what I will present today are some preliminary findings based on a research project Domingo is conducting in the south of the Dominican Republic in the Enriquillo sub-region, which is the poorest part of the country. The project aims at assessing the situation of migrants and their descendants in pandemic times, from the perspective of gauging, too, how parallel legislations in place over the last 5 years have differentially affected migrants and their descendants born in the DR. These twin, complicated and unprecedented initiatives are the operation of the National Regularization Plan for Irregular Migrants and of Law 169, intended to remedy the statelessness of Dominicans of foreign ancestry caused by the Constitutional Court sentence at the end of 2013. In both cases, persons of Haitian origins are the chief beneficiaries of these processes. As Maria Cristina Fumagalli mentioned, the Dominican Republic is challenged both by being the largest site of statelessness in Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the epicenter of the pandemic in the insular Caribbean. On August the 16th, the incoming government of President Abinader's PRM party inherited these conundrums, taking over from almost 2 decades of successive governments of the PLD party. Additionally, the incoming administration is committed to examining the regularization plan for foreigners that has failed according to its stated aims. Were it to have achieved residency status for the majority of those who applied, this could potentially reduce statelessness, since they could register their children born in the Dominican Republic as Dominicans. The research contemplates 7 separate categories of persons, 2 of which refer to the regularization plan, and 5 of which refer to persons stateless or who have been stateless. Hence, we interviewed migrants in the plan and some outside of the plan. We interviewed persons made stateless in 2013 and who had regained their papers, and those who had papers prior to the sentence but had not regained them. Likewise, those who had never been registered as Dominicans but had the right under the Constitution when born, those not registered as Dominicans but signed up to do so through naturalization, and some parents whose children benefited from the presidential decree of the outgoing President Medina, authorizing the naturalization of some 750 children. This categorization is minimalist. There are many more subcategories that are applicable, but is illustrative of the complexities of operating simultaneously the regularization plan and the so-called naturalization law 169. Another criterion is that all the interviews, half men and half women, should have had children born in the Dominican Republic over the past 5 years. The objective here was to assess to what extent intergenerational statelessness obtains despite remedial legislation, and to what extent migrants had access to effective registration for their children born in the DR once within the regularization plan. Objectively, the situation of all interviewed was uniformly difficult under COVID-19, with little access to official social assistance, since this has largely benefited people already receiving social protection and or in possession of a Dominican ID. However, those persons with restored Dominican documents have had access to the Quédate en Casa COVID-19 measure. By contrast, aid appears to be more forthcoming through local organizations supported by the UN system and the European Union, or a parastatal form of aid. Issues to do with registration are rife. The onus on the woman to declare her child means that even in the case of mixed couples where the man is a documented Dominican and the woman of Haitian origin, the child of an ethnically mixed couple may remain undocumented. This is despite the constitutional right of the child in question to Dominican documents. Women of Haitian origins who give birth in public health facilities do not always live with a document registering the live birth, but instead with a vaccination certificate, which will not enable them to engage in birth registry subsequently. Those couples directed towards the so-called foreigners registry book report this being a dead end. However, despite being out of status, those persons within the regularization plan, mainly with non-resident status, understand that once back in status, they should be non-deportable. The testimonies reveal that people are interested in renewing documentation, but either do not know how to do it, do not have the means to do it, or have been unable to travel to find out what is needed, especially under the health and economic constraints of the pandemic. Centralization on the part of the migration management in the DR means that some 20,000 persons have visited the one-stop facility in Santo Domingo for documented migrants over the past year, when, according to official figures, some 200,000 regularized migrants were due to be out of status this year. Parents of beneficiaries of the Danilo Medina decree of July authorizing the naturalization of some 700 children were, in the interviews we conducted, not well versed in the decree, nor how to materialize this to benefit their children. Naturally, in these circumstances, no one was aware that conservative sectors have taken out an anti-constitutional appeal against the presidential decree. President Abinader has tried to make light of this latter. To its credit, the new Dominican government on migration matters has prioritized a possible revision of the migration law, taking into account the regularization plan Manqué. The moment is opportune for the new Dominican authorities to approach the Haitian authorities on outstanding Haitian documentation questions for their nationals seeking to persist with regularization. A recent unofficial visit from the Dominican Foreign Affairs Ministry to Port-au-Prince is an interesting sign of engagement. Equally, President Abinader's affirmation to address the social debt with elderly ex-state sugarcane workers is promising if ensuring their pensions does indeed occur. Unsurprisingly, stateless is on the agenda but obliquely so far, given the well-known political sensitivities. While by no means ideal, the foot in the door left to civil society to root for the naturalization of 750 children should enable policy dialogue to continue between civil society and state actors. Anti-Haitianism is not going to disappear overnight, but the new government has to be mindful of international human rights mechanisms and a new administration in Washington from early next year. Until all the excluded groups in the DR are counted in adequately, not least migrants and stateless persons, COVID-19 will not be controlled. As a governance matter, it behoves the new administration in Santo Domingo to change tack and put their house in order. Should this happen, it will indeed be stranger than fiction. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wooding. I believe we should proceed. I was going to open the floor a little bit for discussion, but I think it's better that we all do the presentations. I'll take notes and questions, and then I'll open the floor, yes? So with that said, I don't think Lisa Cordero has joined us, so I'm going to proceed and introduce with this Stefan Ippolito, Professor Stefan Ippolito, who's a PhD candidate at the University of Albany and an instructor at the CUNY School of Professional Studies. Among his recent publications, he has one, his presentation is entitled Killer Pandemics, Diabetes, and COVID-19 Crisis. And the floor is yours, Stefan. This is, you haven't published this yet. You presented.
It's still in publication. Hi everyone. So yeah, so my things will be, it's called Killer Pandemics, Diabetes, and COVID-19 Crisis. I hope can everyone see my PowerPoint?
Not as of yet.
Let me just make sure I share that. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, there we go. Can everyone see it now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so as I was saying before, the forum is for awareness information purposes only. If anyone needs medical advice, please seek professional assistance in the matter. So I'm going to be going over the Dominican community in general, and Dominican Republic, also in New York City and the United States, because especially in New York City, there's been a high rate of Hispanics dying from COVID-19 in densely populated cities, and also in Santo Domingo, where there's been a high number of people dying as well, especially if you have a comorbidity, such as diabetes. So I'm going to get started. So diabetes is an ongoing worldwide pandemic. This is before COVID-19 pandemic had hit. It was already a concern for millions of people worldwide that were dying from the disease. And it's the #6 cause of death globally. Diabetes also contributes to other health conditions as well, such as heart disease, kidney disease, amputations and such. We also, it's a very big importance, especially Dominican Republic over here in the United States as well and worldwide, that proper healthcare and support for people with diabetes and also addressing the COVID-19 pandemic is made essential to stop the spread of COVID and also to save lives. I'm going to be going over some of these issues in my PowerPoints. Could be health disparities, healthcare in Dominican Republic, government intervention, and diabetes itself. As you can see here, there's a chart on the top that shows a worldwide pandemic in the United States and also in the Dominican Republic. In terms of health disparities, like when we talk about the United States, they go by the comparison of how many excess mortalities that are occurring per 100,000 people in the population. The major issue, as we said again, was COVID-19, the lack of resources, medical care available, and especially hit is the Hispanic community, and some of it's due to health inequality crisis that's occurring. In the Dominican Republic, there's a high prevalence of death with diabetes and COVID-19. The importance of healthcare resources and care is essential now more than ever. According to Dominican Today, it's a website, said about 2-3 months ago, they said that 34% had died from COVID-19 that had hypertensive issues with your heart, high blood pressure and such, and 23.27 of the people that died from COVID had diabetes. Diabetes affects about 14% of the population in Dominican Republic, which is even higher than the United States. The United States is like 1 out of 9. That's about 10%. Hypertension, diabetes are 2 of the major comorbidities of COVID-19. And as you see, it's responsible for over 1,222 deaths. That number has continued to rise. Another article that was posted from the Dominican consulate for the health department and public health department that was there. They state that the success that we have in previous phases in controlling COVID has caused us to lose fear as a society as a consequence. So we want to increase social contact, but in this case, that there's been no more social contact. There was a neglect of using masks, and in losing our fear of the virus, we run a risk of putting the health of Dominican people at risk. And that was from Gustavo Montevallo. He's the director of the High Commission of Control and Coronavirus in Dominican Republic. So same thing that's happening over here in the United States. Just want to make a notation of that. People, from isolation, they're getting stressed out. There's been an increase of depression from this. People are thinking that, well, it's not happening to me. I should be all right, right? Because everyone gets misinformation from people. Oh, it's like the flu, doesn't affect you. And then they end up, sometimes they'll take their mask off. Not saying that that's 100%, like it's going to deter it 100%, but it stops like bodily fluids from coming out and stuff like that. So it helps reduce the spread of COVID. But a lot of people feel that, it's just a mask, what's that's going to do? So they take it off and they increase the spread. I'm going to keep going. So COVID-19 has worsened. It's put a strain on the healthcare system in the Dominican Republic and worldwide elsewhere, and it's pushed it to the limit. The government healthcare system, as I was researching, it provides healthcare for people who are making under $4,000 in Dominican money, pesos. So the worker only qualifies for the basic health insurance. In that case, if they're living in poverty, the family doesn't get it. So if there's a large family and the worker comes in, they're the only ones with the insurance, right? They're coming back to their families. If they have a large family and God forbid one of them gets infected, everyone can get infected from that. So we have a problem also that people are working and living in extreme poverty and they can't afford healthcare. So some people might not even get healthcare and they might be making a couple of dollars over the limit, whatever it is. The same problem is in the United States. Some people don't have insurance, or some people are working and they don't qualify for certain benefits from COVID testing and stuff. They can also be put at risk. Also in Dominican Republic, going back to what I was saying, there's a lack of hospital beds, lack of medication available, lack of, there's limited resources, which puts everybody in severe risk of either getting complications or COVID-19. There's some stuff that's going on that they're trying to limit and try to quarantine, isolate people to prohibit the spread of COVID. The Ministry of Health in Dominican Republic started an initiative, National District of San Domingo province and other provinces such as San Cristobal, Pedernales, and Nagual registered high numbers of people affected by coronavirus. In San Domingo, the Ministry of Health developed COVID-19 testing for rapid application tests in different areas and national territories. They're giving out kits and delivering it. In some cases, they bring it to their homes. There's also, very important, they're also having operations in the center of these districts and rural areas, which are greatly affected by COVID. Also, people, they're making home visits again to people who tested positive, but have mild symptoms or asymptomatic symptoms where they can be treated and they get a follow-up. Also to keep in mind in some of the rural areas that are struck by by poverty, transportation is scarce. Hospitals can be hours away walking, and this can prove to be a big disparity for health for people in Dominican Republic who lack the means to get healthcare, and can result again to a lot of deaths and people suffering from COVID-19. This is reflecting the United States now as a Latinx community in general. As you can see, 46,912 people as of November 10th passed away from COVID-19. There was an increase of 2,959 deaths along Latinos here in America. They also, Latinos experienced 20.2% of all deaths, but account for 18.3% of the population, which is a large number. Again, here's a chart again. I got another statistic. Latino Americans come in third for number of deaths in the United States. However, in New York City, it's different. It's more dense population, like in cities such as San Domingo, New York City, and so forth. Hispanics attribute to 22.8. That's the rate that they have for Hispanics dying in New York City. And there's several reasons why. Again, we want to limit exposure to COVID, right? So social distancing, we want follow-up, stay at home if you're sick. If it's really, really bad, go to the hospital. We also have problems, as mentioned before, about the lack of insurance, healthcare services. We have disparities, discrimination, language barriers here in the States. People might be afraid. Some Latinx communities, they may be afraid. Maybe there's some undocumented people that are living here in the United States. They're afraid to go to the hospital because they think that their immigration might be called upon them and stuff. So they get scared, they stay at home. They don't want to take a risk of going to the hospital at all. There's also, we have the essential workers in the United States. Majority of people, they're marginalized. They work in essential workers. They're exposed more frequently to COVID. We also have large communities that live with their families, and they have large families. Again, if that person is exposed to COVID, they can spread COVID out to their families as such. Going back to diabetes, the United States is the leading, one of the leading industrialization with diabetes. We're 6th leading cause of death in the world, 7th in the United States. about 4 or 5 years ago, this is the stats we have, is 371 million people had diabetes worldwide. That number has jumped up to 425 as of 2019. Nearly half of those people have diabetes, don't even know it. The Hispanic community has seen a great increase in type 2 diabetes, including Dominican population. Type 2 diabetes affects 90% of all diabetes cases. We have 4 different types: type 1, type 2, pre-diabetes, and gestational diabetes. So when you have when pregnant, you get diabetes from that. In my case, I have type 1 diabetes. I had to take insulin all the time. Without insulin, you can die. So it's very essential that people with diabetes get the medication that they need, because they can die from it. Again, Latino adults overall have a 40% chance of developing type 2 diabetes here. The Latino American adults have a 50% chance of developing type 2 diabetes at an earlier age than other groups. They're also predisposition for higher rates of kidney failure and heart failure and other comorbidities. 17% of the Hispanics in the US have type 2 diabetes. Here's a little information about the Dominican Republic. As you can see, 13.45% have diabetes. 9.3% of those have pre-diabetes. So we're talking about over 2 million people in some cases in the population that have it. 1 in 10 Dominicans suffer from diabetes. It's one of the 5 causes the highest work absenteeisms in worldwide. So productivity goes down. That's a big problem. Insurance rates go up. Also, as I was saying before, 1.6 million people die annually from it. Also, your chances of certain risks of cancer, such as pancreatic cancer, breast cancer, also shoot up. As you see here in 2016, the Dominican Republic came in second of Latin nations in type 2 diabetes. Puerto Rico is about 5% higher from that chart. Why is this happening? So as you can see here, diabetic retinopathy, as I mentioned before, is about 84% of the people that get it end up getting some type of retinopathy. It was the 5th major cause of death for Hispanics in 2016. That number has surely risen by then. Also, why is this happening? There could be a number of reasons why it's happening. Genetics. So people believe, doctors believe that, and scientists believe that Hispanics might be having a higher chance of type 2 diabetes because of genetics. Again, Hispanic culture, Latino culture is extremely diverse, right? So you have places like Mexico, they have 75 different dialects of Spanish. So that's just an example, extremely diverse. So different foods, right? Different styles of activities that they're doing, different cultures. So different foods they eat in different provinces might have a higher calorie intake in the type of food they're eating. Also another problem, we have family, diabetes educators have to ask the right questions to people when they come in. They can't just speed along and try to get the patient out of their office. They have to talk to them. They have to learn from the patient what's happening, because every patient is individual. So we know there's a problem, fix it, talk to the patient. Again, Hispanics is a diverse group of people, and it should be treated as such. Everyone's individual. Care must be taken, and the disparities must be ironed out. Again, my closing statement is that worldwide pandemic, COVID-19, diabetes is a serious pandemic, which is killing people by the thousands. So we have to be careful. We have to be more aware. We have to get rid of the disparities that are happening, such as discrimination, language barriers. More care is needed for the Dominican population, more testing if possible, to try avoid and try to isolate the problem that's happening, and try to get more medical facilities to help out. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Ippolito. I think we are going to, I'm waiting for you to, yes. We're going to wait, as I said before, until all the presentations are done, and then I'll open the floor for comments and discussion. I must admit that I am getting a little depressed listening to the situation among Dominicans and Hispanics. It's not news to me. I know I work in public health for a while, so I'm very aware of these rates. But now with the COVID pandemic, we still don't know the impact that this will have on our population, especially those that are vulnerable. With that said, I am going to continue and introduce Professor Nelson Santana, who's an assistant professor, reference librarian at the Bronx Community College at CUNY, my institution. And he's going to be presenting the COVID-19 Dominican oral. Part of his presentation is from the COVID-19 Dominican Oral History Project, on which he's been working on. So I am very honored to have him. Professor Santana is like, part of this, the leg on which this conference has been standing for a while. So I'm really excited to have him in my panel. Welcome, Professor Santana.
Thank you, Professor Fuentes-Mayorga. You are too kind, actually, extremely kind. And just to lighten up the mood.
We know.
So the reason why, good morning, everyone. And so thank you to the panelists for being here, the DSA, the awesome team at Ostos IT for making this possible. You're all brilliant. Thank you so much. I started with that song for two reasons. One is actually, it'll become more evident in a few more minutes. But the other thing is, yesterday in one of the panel sessions, one of my mentors, Professor Aponte, she mentioned that I used to be a singer, that I sing or whatever. And then I invited a lot of people, including my departmental chair, Professor Michael Miller. And he was like, oh, I didn't know that you sing, whatever. So not that I do that any longer, but that's just a song that I co-wrote with some of my colleagues when we used to be bachateros, right? So, and I actually have a podcast, and that's the theme song of the podcast, which will come into play as well in a few minutes. But the title of my presentation is the COVID-19 Dominican Oral History Project. Everyone can see my PowerPoint, correct? Just okay, good. Thank you. Muchas gracias. And in order to talk about this project, I also need to mention another project that I have. This is all intertwined. Is this website that I started along with some colleagues, co-founded with Emmanuel Espinal and Amari Rodriguez is a major part of this as well. And through Santo, we actually document the Dominican community, Dominican culture. So you'll see images there of people that we have interviewed, conducted oral histories of, or just, we might go hang out with El Prodigio and interview him, or Fefita La Grande, or, we also have some scholars. Here's the poet, writer, Dagoberto Lopez Coño, brilliant person. Here is Julissa Mojica. She's an up-and-coming artist. And we also promote social events such as La Marcha Verde. We've been there here in New York as well. And, we post just different types of cultural events, like when Gagapa El Pueblo meets in Washington Heights, or Inwood area, actually. So we've documented that as well. So, just some background, because Santo is actually that portal where we are hosting some of these interviews. And again, the goal is to document Dominican culture. Professor Ippolito actually spoke a few minutes ago, and he provided us with a lot of statistics, which is helpful for this particular presentation. And I'm just just sharing here some stats, some numbers of provided by the World Health Organization. You can actually go to Google and look it up, or you can go directly to their website. And as you can see, here are some cases, or at least the numbers, worldwide, and deaths, as well as in the United States and the Dominican Republic. So we're living in very, very tough times, difficult times. And so, I'm going to try and answer some of these questions. What is the COVID-19 Dominican Oral History Project? Why is the COVID-19 Dominican Oral History Project necessary, right? So this is a personal project, like some of you folks. I think it's important to document. Sorry about that. Let me just get some water a little. So the purpose of this project is to tell the stories of people that have been affected by COVID-19 and capture these stories. I'm sure many of us have been affected. And that has been the case for many. And that is why. So I've been interviewing a lot of people from all walks of life, etc., friends, family. And so far we have about 20 plus interviews, roughly. And so, for example, a good friend of mine, Emmanuel Espinal, one of the stories, his grandfather passed away, and it was sad, right? Because he could not see his grandfather, when they had to identify the body, it was through a phone. So there was that disconnect. It was less than a minute. They couldn't mourn properly this gentleman. They very Catholic family. They couldn't visit him, and they had to cremate him. Which is something the family, it was driving them crazy. So because of COVID-19, we've all had to change the way that we do things, etc. And so I think it's important to capture these stories. I was sitting one day, I was talking to my colleagues at S&M, and I'm like, is anyone capturing the voices of the Dominican community? And then I'm like, I'm not aware of anyone per se. There are some projects here and there. I did publish an article in Latinx Talk, this digital, it's almost like a digital magazine, but it's a digital portal, and I'm grateful for that publication. And I talk a little bit about this particular project. And, I sat down with them. I'm like, well, we have this resource called Essendom. Why don't, before that, I said, let's create an oral history project. And we agreed to do that. And so we started that project. And then I'm like, well, I want to share some of these stories with people. And so we started a podcast called El Experimento Ese. And we decided to relaunch it this year. And in a few minutes, I'm going to share some of those interviews. I'll talk about those two. But for now, it's the idea for this to be an oral history project accessible to people. And so I'll just share these three stories. So I just shared the one from Emmanuel Espinal. Edwin Ferreras, he's an amazing cultural ambassador. He was named, I mean, literally, he was named Dominican Cultural Ambassador of something by the Dominican government, for example. He's a phenomenal person who dances, sings. He's involved in culture. In fact, some of you, if you type the word bachata, dancing bachata, you'll probably find a video of him, Edwin Ferreras, and his dance partner. It's a YouTube video. And so I interviewed him. He got COVID-19, and many people that he knew, and he shared many of his stories. For example, there was this fear. He was here in the Bronx, and his mother at the time was the Dominican Republic, and they just could not travel to be with each other, right? And so he explained some of the people that he has lost, as well as his mother, some of these friends. So these are some voices that we're capturing. Mereliz Ortiz, some of you might know if you're affiliated with City College. She's a former City College student, former president of the Dominican Studies Association, Dominican Students Association, excuse me, another DSA. There are many DSAs out there. And she tells many stories, and one of them is how this government relief, the care package, for example, or the stimulus package, it really hasn't helped small businesses. It's not what it was promoted as being. It was actually it's actually a loan. You have to read the fine print, and if you don't follow certain rules, it becomes a loan. So this is kind of a way of preying on people. So she tells that part, and she also explains the story of how when this started, she didn't live with her parents. She lived with her boyfriend, elsewhere, but she would still go home to do the laundry. And there came a point where they just couldn't see each other. She just had to go, drop it off, and leave. But she couldn't hug her parents, right? But it's not all sadness. Through the Experimento Ese, we have published 2 interviews. And one of them is actually with a former DSA board member. I mean, many of the people here are familiar with Dr. Lisera Costa Corniel. And so in that interview, yes, there is some sadness there. Let's put that on hold for now. But, we also talk about the amazing work that she's doing in San Juan de la Maguana. And through her foundation, la Fundación Alegría Grigri. And basically she has, I mean, we discussed so many things here. But one of the items that we discuss is how through her foundation, she's actually accepting donations and getting money and sharing that with people. In that particular community, again, many different industries, tourism, businesses, I think, well, we've all been affected. And unfortunately, many people have lost their jobs, etc. So through this work, she's actually just providing assistance to some people. And she says, even if it's just like $5, etc., or what $1 goes a long way. And they've been able to, obviously, there are different organizations doing different things, but I thought it was important to share that story of how she's just helping that community in the Dominican Republic, and not just that community in the Dominican Republic, but even here. She's just an amazing woman. She's part of this, what do you call that, a group of people, and they basically, for instance, she goes to people's homes, especially the elderly or people that have difficulty moving, and she just goes there to talk to them so they don't get depressed. She's also one of the people that actually picks up medication from the pharmacy, takes food, picks up food or goes shopping for them and takes it to people that just do not have that mobility. I think it's important to highlight these stories. And that you can actually see this one at esandon.com under the Experimento Ese podcast. There's also another interview that we conducted with Dr. Alex Hill. He's a he's a professor. He's a librarian at Columbia University, and he's just we've heard of people who are doing amazing things like creating PPE equipment, etc., delivering them to hospitals and help you to healthcare workers. Well, Alex is one of those people. And it's just amazing how this is actually the shortest interview, but it's so compact, but at the same time there's just so much information that he's sharing, and he shares the name of the people, the colleagues at Columbia, and names all these different groups, organizations that came together to help them. And I think what's amazing, at least one of the most amazing parts of this project is uh, a few years back, people would laugh at others like myself who would say that, oh, with 3D printing, you can actually create certain things that could be, yes, that, you might be able to create guns, but you can also create some invaluable tools to share. And I believe they stopped it now, if I'm not mistaken, but they were working day and night, or well, shouldn't say working, volunteering their time and creating PPE equipment. So creating face shields, for example, for the medical doctors and for people who come in contact with other people, so healthcare workers. And we hear these stories once in a while, but we do not really see always see the faces behind them. So this is one reason why I interview Alex, because I just thought the interview, I think I conducted it in March or April. I do not recall the exact, at the moment, I do not recall. We published it like 2 months later, but I thought that was an amazing story to capture, right? And so these are some Dominicans that we've been interviewing. And my goal is, if there are people here that are interested in working on this project or who are interested in telling your stories, and again, we're interviewing all types of people. It's not just people doing amazing things. We want to capture as many voices as possible. Since I started the project, I've seen notices of other oral history projects, similar projects. I do not think there's one specifically focused on Dominicans, but and I would like this one to be that one per se. As of now, we do have a few interviews, and there have been some challenges. One of the challenges is involves, of course, in terms of the funding. There are many programs that have been defunded, or there just isn't funding. So this has been a volunteer basis for us, to be honest. And the more people that can join, the better. And if you have any questions, you can, I can share that afterward, etc. But I almost forgot to mention, I have to thank Jose Garcia from Ostos, because he's the one that created I mean, I added the words, but he's the one that created the layout for this PowerPoint. So, again, thank you to all. It's been an amazing team, an amazing journey. If you're interested, my name I'll put in the chat. No, email nelson.santana02@bcc.cuny.edu if you want to participate in this project. And thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Professor Santana. I was wondering, did you mention you were going to make also available podcasts, right? That you have some podcasts. Is it about this presentation or about your singing?
No. I'll copy the two. I'll copy the link here to the two interviews. Yeah.
Very well. Okay. I am really glad to hear the agency that your research shows, right? The community coming together and taking agency in collecting funds and collecting resources, as the case of Professor Acosta Cornell shows in the Dominican Republic. I want to go back and open the floor now for anyone who has questions on the presentation and the video that were shown by Professor Fumagalli and Professor Wooding on the current situation between Haiti and the Dominican Republic and the role of the government and the role of the international community in ameliorating the inequality, the widening of inequality that is now growing between the two small nations, right, between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And it's one that also brings to mind, right, that it's not just a problem between the Dominican Republic and a poorer bordering nation like Haiti, but it's also a problem that Greece is having with North Africa, that Italy is having with the migration of North Africans that are really in a deplorable situation, right? Italy has been on the radar of the international community, and so have Greece, right, for sending back migrants and showing horrible, inhumane measures. And I also, so whenever I teach this and I teach my students, I always like to bring comparisons, right? So they don't think that the case of Haiti and the Dominican Republic is unique, right? There is the Mexico-Haiti border, all the border, right? Greece and Turkey, Germany and Turkey, right? They have all these minorities and a long history of relationship, but this is great. And I'd like to hear more from Professor Fumagalli and Professor Wooding about what do they think the recommendations will be. What do they have in mind for an immediate recommendation by the Dominican government, right? Like, or the international community to help ameliorate the situations of Haitians during COVID-19. Professor Fumagalli or Professor Wooding, if you have any things you would like to.
I think it seems that Bridget is froze. Yeah, I think she's froze and then she left. Well, obviously, as you're saying, I'm in the UK now, and they keep sending people back who come with boats, as if people want to go in boats. People go in boats because you don't recognize their right to apply for asylum where they are. So, the recommendation that you can make, I mean, Bridget can talk about that more in details because she's there and she's working. This is her work. I work in literature, so I look at the picture from a different perspective. But obviously, is create a situation where legality and the legal status is made available to everyone who has the right to have it. That is a very simple kind of recommendation. But and the reason why we wrote this paper and we started thinking about this together is something that has been repeated in all the panels, and is a truism. Like now we have in the UK, we have the first one with the vaccine, which was actually done somewhere else, but claiming that is a British invention. So, but if we are all in this together, we're in this together. If it's not possible for one country to solve this problem, if all the other countries are left behind, and that is is real of a little village as it is real of the world as such. And Hispaniola being an island divided in two, the problem is only exacerbated, but it is a problem that everybody has. And I thought that what was interesting to us was, well, since we are in this deplorable situation, perhaps precisely because we are in this deplorable situation that has to bring us together in a different way, we might, this might create opportunities which are not necessarily given or taken out of altruism and generosity, even if they come out of the selfish gene who doesn't want to die, and therefore make sure that the gene of the other next to you doesn't die either. They are equally welcome. But the possibilities of creating a situation of legality, for migrants, for people who have been living in the DR, if this brings that, is a welcome positive outcome from a dreadful situation. I don't know if Bridget is going to be able to intervene.
Yes, thank you. I wonder if anyone has, I understand and I've been following, I'm not a Haitian expert. We have just Professor Paulino joined us, who's an Haitian-Dominican relations and historian, an expert. So he probably can apportain a bit more, but I understand that the International Organization of Migration, as well as the European Union, the US Department Bureau of Population, and the Dominican Republic government have been involved in circulating food supply and COVID preventive kits to people in the border areas between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, which seem to be the most affected according to what I read. And you know, in my own studies, looking at women who migrate from border area, I'm an expert on women migration, Dominican and Mexican women. I found that women in the border areas, right, between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, are usually the ones that have the highest level of poverty measured by mortality rates, infant mortality rates. And to me, it was paradoxical. I thought that if you live in the border of a richer nation, right, like Mexico and the US, that you will have more opportunities for work and for access to healthcare. And I'm finding quite the opposite. I'm finding also that because of the border limitations imposed in the past 7 months between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, that there have been these communities have suffered the most because there's not food transportation, right? They're not able to access food or medicine. So I'd like to know if anybody else would like to engage in that discussion. If not, if they have any recommendations as to, you know, how the United States, the Dominican Republic government should take this opportunity, right, this crisis, to come up with new solutions. The same thing that I argue with the United States, right? All the essential workers in New York City, where I study, where I'm an expert, right? Most essential workers are Latinos and immigrants. So the COVID-19 presents a big opportunity for us to advocate and say, hey, do we want these workers to protect us from death because they present a buffer? They are the one that protect the middle and the upper class from dying. So why don't we give them the legal rights that they deserve, right? So something like that is what I'm thinking. With that said, I'd like to also invite a discussion on the presentation of Professor Ippolito and, you know, his timely presentation of the rate of diabetes and how it combined with the crisis to increase much more vulnerability of Dominicans, right? And I'm assuming of Haitians, both in the Dominican Republic and in the US, right? And I'd like to know, you were saying, Professor Ippolito, that Dominicans have Hispanics in New York City. And I noticed that you referred to Hispanics and you also referred to Latinx. And that's something that is going on right now. We need to know.
So like as I know, like Latinx community also includes everyone from Latin background. So that would also include Haitians and also French. So Hispanics is just mainly from Spain and Spanish descendants. But sometimes it's used interjectively, you know, when they're making
Let me see.
These,
of course, you said that Nahua is at the center. The Nahua suffer a lot, one of the highest rates of mortality or infections. I don't remember. I was reading fast.
Mortality, and also infections.
Okay.
It's both. It's both. I have a little bit of experience because I also work in Dominican Republic in Santo Domingo with my wife, who's going to be the panel 27, Fiordalisa. So we do a lot of work in Dominican Republic and also in Washington Heights with the Lions Club International. And we also have an organization called Helping Humanitarian Hands. So we try to gather as much stuff as we can, donations, medicine, and try to send it down there. Especially with the COVID pandemic, it's been very tough. So we try our best. I mean,
I'm wondering
Professor Nelson Santana was mentioning earlier, like there's a lot of stories that are coming out and we need people to come together. You know, just that one person, 1 times 1,000. Imagine everyone chipped in $1,000. You can send it right over there and help. Exactly. So every little bit helps.
But I also want you to invite the panelists as well as the audience to reflect. I'm curious about how nations like the Dominican Republic, whose major general economy depends on tourism, how those regions are probably most affected. Ironically, you know, the most developed areas right, are most affected by the contagion, right? By having service workers, essential workers, right? And Nagua, where I was born only 15 minutes away from there, right? And I have to be, in order for me to go to my village, I have to go to Nagua. And it's a very congested, dense city that is in the epicenter of every touristic route. Everybody who's going to the northeast, to the beach, to the shore, has to go through Nagua. So I just want to leave you with a reflection and see if you have anything else to say. We have 10 minutes left, and I'd like to invite discussion from the panelists as well as from the audience. I see a couple of chats. I'm trying to see if they have questions. Thank you for attending. Okay. So what do you think, Professor Santana, since you also do research in the Dominican Republic with Professor Acosta Cornel, and Professor Ippolito, that perhaps the areas that are going to be the most vulnerable are
Yes.
those that ironically are the most developed.
Yes, like say for instance, Santo Domingo has a very high, their capacity is full for the hospitals because it's very conjugated. So like Washington Heights, in Manhattan, it has the largest, it's a yellow zone area now because it's very congested. If everyone's, I believe Professor Nelson had mentioned it, Santana, in Washington Heights, if anyone's been down to St. Nicholas or Amsterdam, they have vendors galore, and there's like a gazillion. I was there last week. I went to go pick up Three Leches cake at 100 and 182nd right there, 181st in the corner there. So I went to go pick it up. There's like a big, huge load of people walking back and forth. So even if you have your mask on, you're still in so close proximity that you can still get sick. And this has been a major problem because it's very diverse, it's very active. People are walking around, and sometimes you don't think of it because you have your mask on, you're walking around, you're like, oh, hey, I'm okay, you know? No, that's not the case. The virus is still there. You can get infected. So you're exactly correct. High dense population areas like New York and San Domingo are affected from that.
Thank you. Correct. Professor, not to switch completely, but Professor Kara Goin asked a question. You mentioned that the tragic story of having to identify that family member through a phone, but do any of your oral histories discuss how new media technology is facilitating a continued connection among Dominicans that are physically separated due to the pandemic? So it was so much to discuss in a very short presentation. So, one thing that we found, many of us, is, well, we can actually put a conference together and connect people and bring even more people, have more people to participate. And the same is true about, just technology in general. Yes, there are the negatives, but yes, there are also positives. So for example, for that same family that I mentioned that lost their patriarch, they also had so when there's I apologize, my baby's in the background, sorry about that.
That's wonderful. That's the best part.
Thank you. So when there is a funeral, many times you have at least one person, usually more that are not able to attend, right? Because of the fare of the flight, etc. And sometimes if you're Dominican, you know about this. Sometimes you're like, este dinerito para ir al viaje, para pagar ese vuelo, mejor se lo mando, se lo envío para que ayude con los gastos de la fúnebre, ¿verdad? Right, we say that. We'll say, instead of paying for the trip, I'll send the money so it can help with the cost of the funeral costs, etc. And so this family, yes, it was very sad. And if you watch programs like The Good Doctor, you'll see those interactions of the cell phone, etc. Very short. But the positive, if you look at the positive aspect of it, is that those relatives that perhaps would not be able to attend the funeral, they actually they all participated and were all able to attend via Zoom. So Zoom allowed them to be connected in that way. So yes, there's that disconnect, but there's also that connection. And technology has played a very important role, post-pandemic. I'll share this. I'm someone who I got a degree online, a master's degree, right, in library and information science. And I could tell that sometimes people would, think a little bit differently of me. Yeah, that's like a BS degree. Well, now just about everyone is doing online classes, and we're seeing that this is a valid degree. So it's even helped in that aspect as well, right? So thank you, Professor Goin, for that question. Yeah, thank you.
Technology, thank you to the two of you for the feedback. But technology has also allowed us to have someone like from Samana participating in our project, or in our discussion. We have about 19 different countries, or 9 different countries that are participating today. On almost 100 institutions that are participating. I remember Professor Santana, in 2007, my oldest sister died, 57 years old. She was an oral surgeon, and she just dropped it one morning, boom. And my brother, who came from the Dominican Republic, the youngest one in the family, he brought his cell phone. And while we were having the prayers at night, every night we were doing the Rosario, he put the phone so that his family could hear. So her mother, right, my mother, who couldn't be here, could hear the prayers for her daughter. And I remember thinking like how powerful technology is, right? And the same thing now with the undocumented population in New York City that cannot even go to the funeral or the hospital to see their relatives. We have about 7 minutes left, and would like to know if anyone has a question. Professor Torres Ayan, yes. We can't hear you, Professor. You have to unmute.
Yes. So am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you. So I am sorry for missing the panels, the papers that I missed in this panel. You know, I've been doing the rounds, but I was curious about whether in Maria Cristina Fumagalli's paper presentation there was any reference to different kinds of crises that we've had in the past and the border areas, like, you know, when there's been a hurricane and floods, and you have people dying on both sides, and then there's state intervention that needs to come in and decide what to do with the dead Haitians and what to do with the dead Dominicans. You know, does your scope attempt to capture any of that in a comparative sense?
I had 7 minutes, Silvio. So it was a diminished remit. What I tried to do, I used 2 texts, a short story by Diaz, which is called Monstro, and a novel by Rita Indiana, which both dealt with pandemic. So I wanted to look at the way in which Dominican writers had dealt with pandemic within the genre of speculative fiction. And I connected them with the time in which they were published, 2011, 2015. So something to do with the cholera epidemic, the post-earthquake, what was happening at the border with the closure and the opening on the border with the pandemic, with the cholera epidemic. And then, you know, later with Rita Indiana, a reflection on the 2013 ruling and the disposal of Asian bodies in the speculative way in which it is done with lethal gas. So this was then the comparative and sort of framework that I was trying to create. So something along the lines that you suggested, but in a sort of condensed way. You're mute.
Yeah, so I remember the Dominican government in moments of the kind that I mentioned, having to make decisions about, you know, cremating and not, or rather not waiting until family comes, because the bodies are beginning to decompose, and so you know, it's a kind of thing. Maybe that's the kind of thing that is informing Monstro and those other stories as well. Yeah? Because they have the transnational death, transnational death becomes a problem. Yeah?
Yes. The interesting thing is that both tests had located the beginning of the epidemics in Haiti. While here we are, you know, one of the reasons why this is stranger than fiction is that nobody would have expected that Haiti would have done, for some reason, a little bit better than the Dominican Republic. And actually it was Haiti that closed the border this time,
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
Which again, with the problems that it is creating, but is something, stranger than fiction if found. So I was also trying to look at that in those terms, but with the cholera epidemics, with the the border there is so easily crossed. You cross it so easily that imagine how easily a virus can cross it. I mean, it's impossible to seal. And so we were saying, make it a positive. Make the fact that it's impossible to seal. Make the fact that it is impossible to create a cordon, and protect yourself from the virus. Make it a positive and use it as a springboard to to create a legal scenario for everyone.
Yeah, well, thank you for that explanation, and thank you for the two presentations that I heard, Professor Ippolito and Professor Santana. Very edifying.
I would just like to add to what Maria Cristina said, that I think the other thing which is very interesting on the island at the moment is the kind of political developments, if you like, on both sides of the island, which come at a time exactly coinciding with the pandemic, if you like. Change of government after almost 2 decades of the PLD party, and now forthcoming elections in Haiti. And for the first time, a little bit more détente in relations, international relations between the two countries. And I think that is also something which may or may not move forward, but I think it's something in conjunction with the pandemic, which it's very interesting to consider.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, I was remembering the reference that how much Loja Garcia Peña in her book, how much she makes of that woman, a famous woman who became famous worldwide during is it a hurricane or a flood, who actually gave her body to nurse Haitian children at the hospital, and became internationally known figure for that. So that are there those instances? How many instances of those can we fish out? Instances in which these crises bring out people's connecting with their own humanity, and forget about what the official discourse says about the other. Yeah.
Sonia Marmolejos after the earthquake.
Yeah. How much are we seeing any of that in the COVID-19 situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot more of a humane situation going on, and different to some other borders. What's been happening has been that everything's been going on in very informal ways, and with an official blind eye being given to that, and things are amazingly functioning. The kind of parallel border markets happening, and obviously the border is going to be officially reopened, but up until now there've been all sorts of unofficial things happening, and very positive things happening in terms of aid happening on the border. So I think it has been on balance, a positive moment.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you.
Norma, you're mute.
Unmute. Thank you. I'd like to thank you, all of you, for presenting and for engaging us and supporting this conference, for bringing your research findings and making all of us smarter and much more prepared, spiritually and academically, to deal with the current crisis that we're living. I invite you to join the next sets of panels for this afternoon, for the rest of this morning and afternoon. I am moderating panel number 30, but we have very interesting panel 26, panel 27, 28, And then we have the concluding business this afternoon. I also remind you, if you can, to please look at the link sent to you to participate in the arts exhibit, where you will have a chance to do a silent pledge for any painting or any art that you would like, and we'll reserve it for you. So please do so, because this is how the Dominican Studies Association survives. So thank you again. And for those of you who would like copies of the presentations, please email us, email the Dominican Studies Association, and we will get it to you. Okay. Thank you, Professor Santana, Professor Fumagalli, Wooding, Ippolito, for your presentations.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.